Greetings, Internet. Here we are 5 months into 2021, a year that has not been without its hurdles, but so far seems to be faring a lot better for most people across the board than 2020 has been. The big news is that we're getting closer and closer to being completely out of the woods and being able to go outside without wearing masks, or at least into public settings without wearing masks. Of course, I still stand by that the best option is not to jump onto that action just yet until the announcement is officially made by scientists as well as governors that it's safe to do so. In other news, we've already gotten our first dose of hot weather where I live, and I'm about due for another haircut as I'm recording this. I'm only waiting until summer's officially started to get it cut so that I can stay short and my head will stay cool throughout the duration of the heat. Today's video essay has taken some time for me to get my thoughts together so I can have the best possible version of it. It's a topic that I think we all need to take the time to stop and think about. Part of my inspiration to make this was Lindsay Ellis's recent Mask Off video, which I have seen a mix of responses to. Some said that she handled the deal very well overall, others have said that her takes were bad and that her apologies came off as non-apologies. And truth be told, I can see and understand the arguments for the latter. I think the best option is to let time pass and see how she handles future controversies that she finds herself in. Another thing that has inspired me to make this has to do with the fact that my two most popular videos on my channel have dealt with two well-known figures on YouTube, the mysterious Mr. Enter and MisAnthropony, who have both fallen from grace because of the way that they've dealt with being called out on their words and their actions. Of course, this extends to figures in all venues of life, be it in the world of politics and in the world of the entertainment biz, where we've seen the downfall of several beloved figures. For every Zack Snyder in the field who deals with these situations gracefully, there is at least two others like Gina Carano and Ellen DeGeneres who do not, and end up getting canceled because of it. I mean, I'm not a fan of the concept of cancel culture myself, but there are instances where it's appropriate to say they brought this on themselves. There are other videos like the Council of Geeks video on should creators call out their fandoms, and Cellspecs and I Love Kim Possible Lot's video on how difficult it is to be a YouTuber. But now I'm here to give my 2 cents on the matter. I mean, I try to set an example, and I by no means have the largest, most influential platform ever, but I'm not ruling out the possibility that I'll gain a larger following as time goes on, and in fact, that's what I hope to do. That's why I consider it important to exercise these kinds of principles right now, so that I know how to deal with these sorts of dramas should they arise, the more exposed I make myself. Nobody who regularly practices good principles gets worse at them. There's a saying that you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. You can avoid becoming the villain in the first place by heeding the warning signs, or if you do end up becoming the villain, you have the opportunity to redeem yourself, by learning from your mistakes, of course. People may one day read into something that I didn't intend to say, for better or worse, so if it's for worse, I want to be prepared to respond to it in the best way I can, at least in the long run. I do my best to avoid assuming the worst in people, but I know that there are a lot of people out there who will just try to take whatever shots they can at any person to make themselves feel better, for whatever reason. But even if there's no one-size-fits-all way to handle a controversy that befalls you, there are at least a few ideas that we can regard as general rules of thumb to bear in mind whenever dealing with them. Of course, as with anything else, I know there's going to be exceptions to every rule of thumb I bring up here, so try to take them as just that, rules of thumb. If you practice them more, you will not only get better at learning how to deal with these issues when they crop up, but you will also be able to identify the situations that are exceptions to said rule. It's a skill that we must all work to build, even if it's one that no one person in this world will ever be able to perfect. But the better you can make yourself as a person, the better you can surround yourself with the right kind of people and audience, and the better chance you can stand of turning things around when things start to go awry. So without further ado, let's get into it. Regarding Lindsay Ellis and her Mask Off video, I have watched, well, more than one video deconstructing a lot of what she had said in the video, saying that her points were more than a little flawed, saying that she's bad at apologizing, yada yada yada. I'm by no means the best person to determine how valid these criticisms made against her are. All I will say is that, watching the video myself, while there were some takes that she made that I myself did find questionable, or even mind-boggling at times, I did at least get the impression that she did at least have enough humility to own up to her wrongdoings and give full disclosure that there's still a lot that we all have to learn. One thing I will address about Lindsay Ellis, however, is her comment of, I'm not a real celebrity. I'm not instantly recognized by random bypassers on the streets of LA. I don't have the most subscriptions or watchers on YouTube. My book doesn't even make the top of the New York Times bestsellers, etc. I, for one, never said that she was, but personally, I think the term celebrity is measurable only depending on the concept and certain areas. While I will concede that she was likely referring to how ridiculous it is to place her on such a high pedestal that her watchers can no longer think for themselves or form their own opinions, she still has a large influence over those who watch her and read her published works, especially with millions of subscribers and her book being on a bestseller list in the first place. Personally, while I do think that people on the internet at large are susceptible to this nasty subconscious mindset of taking the opinions and words of people whom they really look up to as the gospel truth or something, it's important to remember that an audience of any size is a form of power. Your voice might not be the loudest amongst the crowd, but it's not always the loudest voice that gets the most influence. You might just have the same amount of influence just on a smaller group of people, and size doesn't always constitute strength. It's sometimes more a matter of how you know to play the game, and knowing when and where the right thing to say is. When you do have a large following on a platform like, say, YouTube, large enough to get some sort of income from it anyways, you certainly can't just blurt out whatever's in your head and assume it's not going to hurt anyone or have any serious consequences. We have seen in recent years how you don't have to be a household name to have influence. Small things have their own way of overrunning the large, after all. If someone with fewer followers doing the same thing as you, more or less, isn't getting the same level of scrutiny, it could be for a variety of reasons pertaining to having an audience size, but I think an important one to bear in mind is that they might not have the same experience using the platform that you do. At least not in terms of number of years, garnering larger followings, or using it to generate income. That's why you yourself need to set an example, as a person who has that following. I mean, I myself am barely scraping the 100 subscriber count on this particular channel as I'm making this video. I don't put ads on it, I don't have any professional equipment, or even currently have enough spare time on my hands to dedicate any sort of full-time career on YouTube. But I still put as much effort into carefully considering everything I want to say in every video that I make, because I know that 100 subscribers is not nothing. I'm thankful for the people who watch me, because I didn't make videos just to surf trends or just to be time-wasting entertainment for my watchers. I made videos to help spread positive word of mouth and get people thinking. And from the responses I've gotten and the people whom I've gotten to know who are currently following me, I accomplished that goal with that. So I bear in mind that there is some sort of responsibility to that. What you say and who you say it to. You don't need to respond to every tweet that you see on Twitter that strikes an unpleasant chord with you. In fact, it's generally better if you refrain from doing that. Pick your battles wisely. There have been way too many instances of unnecessary drama born out of knee-jerk reactions which have stemmed out of assuming the worst in a person or what they were saying. This is even prominent in industrial businesses such as filmmaking when it comes to prominent franchises with huge fan bases that contain the worst kinds of people, that trying to please them with remakes that try to fix things that were never problems with the originals, or sequels and follow-ups that exist only to retcon whatever people took issue with the originals, which only results in worse products overall. Now naturally, that doesn't mean you should go the other extreme and just moon your whole audience. We've seen instances where some input from consumers can be beneficial depending on who says what and how they say it. I recognize the temptation to respond to every little response, to weed out the ones that benefit you amongst all the others that don't. But the near 28 years of me being alive has taught me that, if it's tempting, you should always think twice before doing something. And most often, you should always be prepared to own up to the potential aftermath of you being wrong. But of course, there are those who have had their heads shoved so far up their already constipated asses that they will never hear anything other than what they want to hear. Those people are not worth your time. In my case, one thing I do when I see a comment or title of a video or article that catches my eye, instead of clicking on said video, I will usually click on the channel button so I can get a general impression of the content produced by the owner of said channel. That's the first thing that speaks to me about his or her character and whether or not said comment or video is worth my time and attention. My most popular video today is easily my MisAnthropony video. I've seen a number of comments on my video defending Map's trash talking of Channel Awesome and anyone who still enjoys watching them, and I don't pay those comments any sort of attention. You should never instantly agree with someone or defend what they're saying for any reason that pertains to "it feels good to hear." That is a mindset that is dangerous in the realm of politics, and it's dangerous in all venues of life. And given how Map has moved on from talking about Channel Awesome for months now to take his rage and vitriol out on other trending topics, there is no question in my mind that he never cared about the people who were done wrong by Channel Awesome and only wanted more and more excuses to trash the walkers. This is especially evident how he apparently never cared about the people whom he had hurt, making a tasteless joke at Joel Schumacher's expense shortly after his death, and how evidently most people who have met him in person at annual BronyCons would describe him as a rude and insecure individual. You don't want to waste time making any more enemies than necessary, and by that I mean more than the ones who will just look for some reason to dump on you for their own personal gain. Enemies will always be opponents, but opponents are not always enemies. It's your job to be the better person when things start to go south between you and someone who wants to take you down, because you don't want to give your enemies more ammunition to use against you. Life is a game where the rules are unfair, which is why you need to learn how to play your cards smart. When you play certain video games, like specifically first-person shooters or combat games, you know that the worst thing that you can do is fight in the territory of your opponent, especially when you are at a disadvantage in the situation. If someone starts getting nasty, make them play in your territory and learn how to engage effectively so that you'll be able to set all the rules. That's the best thing that you can do in real life. Culminate your own, not safe space, but community where you welcome input from others who have something constructive to say. Take time collecting your own thoughts and channeling them into an outlet where you can share them with a following of people whom you can trust to internalize and give some positive constructive feedback. Don't surround yourself with yes men who will just praise everything that you say. Bring people into your life who are smart and can give you just as much insight into their perspectives as you can give them yours. And while we're on this topic, people do this all the time, so let's not add more of it onto the pile. If you're going to talk or write about what someone is doing wrong, do it because you got something constructive to say, and because you want to see that person do better, not because you have a grudge against him or her. We all have this capacity to make bad takes if we're triggered, or if we're in a bad mood. And for this, I recommend watching Christina Lopez's video on how to handle being triggered. I know how easy it is to lose patience. I know that we don't always have the resources we need to help us figure out how to work past our personal problems. That's why empathy is something we need to constantly exercise. There are always times where we will inevitably lose control of ourselves, which is why we need to make sure that when it happens, we can regain that control and keep ourselves in check, at least long enough to get the help that we need. And sometimes we need help doing that. Asking for help doesn't make us immature. In fact, it's the most mature thing you can do, as recognizing when and where we need help is one of the hardest things for a lot of us. We all do have our own personal roads that we must walk by ourselves, but not all of them, when most of us are heading in the same direction. If you're just trying to make out a popular figure to be Hitler, especially if you never knew said figure personally, you're not just hurting said figure, you're also hurting the people who actually did meet said figure in real life and had positive experiences with them. One thing that people tend to forget regarding Uncle Ben's classic great power, great responsibility line from Sam Raimi's Spider-Man is where he says, maybe the other kid did deserve to get smacked across the hallway, but just because you can do it doesn't give you the right to. This was even further explored in the highly controversial third movie. Yes, the one with Peter Parker's stupid emo haircut. Being able to inflict damage upon someone is a powerful, destructive mentality that can be addictive, especially with the mindset of believing that it is for something righteous. Referring quickly to another famous superhero movie, Batman Begins, there's a line about how revenge and justice are never the same thing, no matter how you try to paint them as such. No platform, online or not, should be used as a weapon against a person. Again, it is your responsibility to be the better person. Just because you might turn out to be right in the end does not give you the right to act all smug about it. Because that karma will come back to bite you in the ass hard when you find yourself in that same sticky situation. And when some unknown detail comes out that you weren't aware of, reveals some unforeseen detail about the people you were dead set on taking down, the egg is on your face. And anyways, what are you even using any specific website for, be it YouTube or Twitter, if you're not passionate about it? If you abuse your power online, then it will get recognized as abuse and you will get deplatformed. Or if you somehow manage to dodge that bullet, your actions will eventually come back and ricochet back to you like a boomerang. If somebody has gradually been rubbing you the wrong way more and more with what he or she has said, you may be awaiting for their ultimate mask-off moment to justify inflicting punishment on them. Maybe consciously, maybe sometimes not. But again, that's more just temptation than anything. If you just want somebody to be punished, then I implore you to look back on that one scene from 12 Angry Men when juror number 8 calls out juror number 3 for acting like a quote-unquote self-appointed public avenger and clearly voting guilty because he personally wants the convict to die rather than because of what the facts indicate. If you really put less energy and focus on the person getting punished and more If you really put less energy and focus on the person getting punished and more on him or her learning a lesson, then the lesson should really be more to their benefit than yours, because bear in mind that it may say more about you than about them. If that person redeems him or herself, that's commendable. There have been some figures in my life who have said something that turned me off from them permanently. And I've had it happen to me as well with one or two people, and it left me in a state of asking, what did I do for some time? But I try to keep in mind that maybe that person is just going through something, so the best I can do is move on with my own life. I'm one who tries to keep my perception about a company as objective and unbiased as possible. I'm not one to turn a blind eye to all the bad stories leaked out from companies or such, and I do my best to keep my perspectives as objective as possible. You can refuse to believe me on that, but I've already made my case for who I think that says more about. I know I'm just one person in a sea of millions, and since I know it's unrealistic for any creator or studio to try to cater to me specifically, I let them decide where their own priorities lie. If they're going to do something that disappoints me, I'll have my say on it and what I think can be done to improve it, but I'll say it only once, and then I'll walk away and let them decide for themselves if they want to improve or not. The only thing I know I can do is give my support to what I feel is worthy of my attention, and that goes for all venues of life. Now right up front, if you have ever been abused or harassed at any time in your life, none of that is your fault and you certainly did not deserve it. However, it is your responsibility as an adult to take action to ensure you don't take the same kind of abuse and harassment out on others who've done nothing to deserve that. If you have a confession to make in front of a large group of people, by all means, go ahead and make it. You owe it to yourself and to those who watch you to look to you for inspiration, to be as honest with them as possible for every reason in the world. Making excuses, however, is not an admirable thing to do, and it isn't something that your audience will benefit from either. Rather than being a sign of trying to learn and improve as a person, it really comes off more as an attempt to alleviate oneself of any sort of responsibility for one's own actions. The mysterious Mr. Enter is someone whom I used to watch and respect, certainly enough to let him make a video defending himself a few years back where he legit admitted that, exempting attacks on his character, it was okay to not like him and even criticize his actions and the stuff that he has created. And I myself gave him sympathy whenever he would share his stories about the harassment he's been confronted with online, the toll it's been taking on his mental health and sometimes physical health as well, and how he's just seemed to be like this magnet for the worst kind of people and attention. In more recent years, however, he's been resisting callouts from people who've had his best interests in mind. My video commentary on his El Tigre review was one of many rebuttals to his Nicorama series where people have frequently called him out on how his series was not well planned out, how he was dipping more and more into the territory of doing bad faith critiques, and how he got so many details about all the shows so incorrect that it was evident he did not watch enough of the shows to give professional critiques on them, which is particularly bad when his videos are generating some sort of income for him. But instead of hearing out these callouts, he doubled down on his condescending attitude. One example of this being putting the show Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on the list of worst cartoons of the 2010s and saying, quote, "It's got such a response that the only option was for me to be proud of how much I hate this stupid-ass show." But things only went worse for him after both his videos spreading misinformation about the COVID situation when the lockdown happened, both of which got called out, and later his anti-mask journal on DeviantArt, which spurred him to up and delete his DeviantArt account immediately after making it, which is not a good look for everyone, especially when others can and have already screen capped what he's posted. For all his insisting that people calling him out were simply harassing him, most of them explicitly stated in their commentaries that they insisted that all the criticism that they were giving him, they genuinely wanted to see him do better. One such example being Surus, and his commentary on Mr. Enter's video defending his bad, misinformed takes on the COVID situation, but more so about his statement that healthcare is not a human right. At the end of his commentary, he explicitly stated that Enter needed to be corrected, not harassed. Despite this, however, Enter would only get worse. He'd engage more and more in the realm of politics, but not in ways that made him look good. And if anyone would bring up the drama stirred up by his Nicorama series, or anything else he's talked about in later months, he would default to the response of, "My videos are just being taken out of context." This would result in things like his Discord incident of sniping at someone who said that they genuinely enjoyed his videos with the response of, "Do not ping me." This repeated process has sent him into a downward spiral where he's not only made something of a pariah of himself among figures who work in the animation industry, but has also been disassociated from people who have previously done one-on-one work with him, either in his reviews or in his Groaning Around project. And this goes for all the figures whom I mentioned in this video who quit Twitter. There are justifiable reasons to exit a certain platform that you feel is attracting the wrong crowd, and sometimes it can feel that a place that we decided to go on has turned into the kind of environment that we never wanted to get involved in to start with, but if you decide to delete your account right after you come in under scrutiny for one or more bad takes, people will take that as a sign of you trying to dodge consequences. There's only so many times people can keep giving you the benefit of the doubt, especially if they are willing to go out of their way to get some input from the other side of the story. And if you continue to play the victim card and make excuses to justify your wrongdoings, you will just end up belligerent and alienating those who come up to bat for you. And when you are coming in under fire for what could be classified as genuine bullying or malice, it will just be another boy who cried wolf scenario. Now believe me, I know how much it hurts when you're genuinely struggling with something that really isn't working out for you, and people are just brushing it off with, "You're just making excuses," or "You're not trying hard enough." And to that, I was given this valuable bit of sage advice on how to tell the difference between making excuses and genuinely struggling with a personal change. Explain your case very carefully, very clearly, only once, and to yourself. Then do it to others. Whatever their response is, you will at least be able to take solace in the knowledge that you are being honest with yourself. And if things are getting really bad for you, then maybe it's time to put more effort and energy into making excuses to what it takes to get into a better position than make excuses not to. Mr. Enter himself said it best back when he reviewed Disney's 2007 movie Meet the Robinsons. We can give up, we can choose to ignore our failures, we can choose to blame others, or we can improve. It's only one of these options that will get us to a better future. In the famous words of Neil deGrasse Tyson, the hardest part of life is knowing enough about a subject to think that you're right, but not enough about a subject to know that you're wrong. The best thing you can do is recognize that you might not be as smart as you think you are and accept input from others. CinemaSins are one example I would like to refer to, as they are/were an example of a popular persona online that has become recognized in the film business for not the best reasons, despite not exactly being what one would call a household name. I have bought them up before and have taken my fair share of potshots at them in the past for these reasons, but believe it or not, that's not what turned me off from them. No, the thing that killed CinemaSins for me was how they responded to all this criticism via Everything Wrong with CinemaSins Volume 2, which felt more like a passive-aggressive punchback at their detractors instead of playful self-deprecation like the first one was. We're all going to feel compelled to defend ourselves at some point, and there's no denying that it is sometimes called for. But more often what you should consider doing first is humbling yourself to advice from others. I know there is a fine line between doing that and being a people pleaser. Heck, it's something that I myself am still working on finding the right balance for. But if you're going to stand by your convictions, the very least you should be willing to concede to is listening when someone has a grievance with what you've said. You don't always have to respond, but be open. We, as social figures, all need some reassurance at some point in our lives that we are worthwhile, that we are important to others. Feeling loved and appreciated by others is a psychological necessity. We'd be constantly battling our inner selves if we didn't have it. But this can be a double-edged sword as well, because helping and feeling like you're helping are two different things. There's a saying that it's easier to forgive your enemies than your friends, and that the ones you love are the hardest of all to forgive. That's because those relationships are the ones worth fighting to preserve. Which I feel is an appropriate segue into I'm sure a lot of you have heard about Sia's new movie Music and how it's easily one of the worst, if not the worst, reviewed movie of the year so far, and the whole sea of controversy surrounding it. You can watch Jessie Gender's video on it because she really articulated all the problems with the movie, its portrayal of non-verbal autists, the negative stereotypes that it pushes, the whole debate of its casting fully abled actors in disabled roles, Sia's involvement with Autism Speaks, etc. Far better than I ever could. All I will say about the movie regarding how it pertains to my video topic is that apart from the release of Sia's movie being preceded by a long thread of nasty tweets from her towards people who have collectively called her out on decisions that went into making her movie, Her attempt at apologizing for the movie with things such as, "We're sorry for this particular scene, we will give it full disclosure in advance and remove it for later viewings," only after it was not only released, but also got 2 Golden Globe nominations. This is a big example of a fake, or at the very least, insincere apology. Saying sorry only after reaping the benefits of your involvement with something that has inflicted damage upon others is a major red flag. Also not helped by the fact that she too deleted her Twitter account in light of the reaction she has gotten from her long thread of tweets, only with her last post being a heads up that she will be deleting her Twitter. Saying a quick sorry while attempting to cover one's tracks and erase their long history is not a sign of genuine humility. If anything, had she left up those tweets and a word of apology following up said tweets, then just remained inactive on Twitter for some time, my thought is that people might believe that she was genuinely sorry and be willing to accept her back into the platform with open arms should she decide to return to it. One movie I can think of that's great at showing how to do a non-fake apology, and in fact also happens to be about autism, is the 2009 independent claymation movie Mary and Max. In it, after Mary unintentionally sabotages her friendship/pen palship with Max by using him as a case study in the thesis of her best-selling book, and ignorantly suggesting that maybe they can work to help find a cure for his autism, she resides her credibility and destroys every copy of the book. She doesn't do it for good publicity, she doesn't try to put up a defense for why she believed herself to be in the right for writing what she wrote. She does it to avoid bringing any further unwanted attention to Max, and after Max mails her the M key that he ripped out of his typewriter to signify his cutting all ties with her, the last thing she sends him in the mail is a can of sweetened condensed milk with a simple "I'm sorry" written on it, intending it to be her last exchange with him on her behalf and expecting he'll never respond to it. But Max, in part due to circumstances and his personal life that helps him reconsider his previous perceptions, does respond to Mary with a letter of forgiveness, recognizing that she had made an honest mistake, but their friendship is worth preserving in spite of it, because he recognizes her sincerity. That's what a real apology is. It's not begging for forgiveness, but recognizing the damage done on someone else's behalf and doing everything in one's power to prevent it from getting worse. And I heard this quote that I think says something very valuable. The fact that you apologize doesn't necessarily mean that you were in the wrong and the other person was in the right. It simply means that you value your relationship with said person more than your own ego. There is no one-size-fits-all way to most venues of life, and that includes how you handle a controversy that is directed towards you. But the big takeaway I'm hoping for with this video is that if you ever find yourself in hot water, the mentality that you should do everything in your power to avoid is the mentality of, "I'm at the mercy of the universe." You need not blame yourself for every bad thing that is said towards you, but rather, instead of fretting about the circumstances not in your control, you should put more focus on what is in your control. We're not products of our circumstances. We are products of our decisions. We all have our limitations, and as a species, we will always be prone to making decisions based on said circumstances, but it's up to you, as a free-thinking individual, to decide how you will turn around certain decisions before the damage gets to a certain point. We all have heard the saying that everyone wants to go to heaven, but no one wants to do what it takes to get there. Well, when confronting something in your life you feel compelled to change, you have to treat it as less of a sentence and more as a motivation. And one thing that really helps with this is recognizing what the other wants to achieve and being willing to help them along their journey as well as yourself. Those are the people who are worth listening to. Maybe there are others who want to, but they don't know how to articulate what they want to say, so give them time and advice to learn how to internalize it in a way that benefits them, and don't instantly assume that they're a lost cause. If they do end up proving after repeated behavioral patterns and not done in good faith that they are a lost cause, then you should distance yourself from them. You can't blame others for sucking life out of you if you're the one giving them the straw. And I understand that you can't always afford to be picky with whomever consumes your content, especially if you want to build a sustainable audience. But that makes it all the more important to be open-minded whenever possible to people who may see things from a different lens than yours. That will help make whatever you produce better, when you learn all the different reasons as to why your content appeals to different people. The people whom I prioritize my engagement with are those who look at me through the screen and recognize me as a human being. I made the videos I did on my channel not to get views necessarily, but because I trust that what I have to say is important to someone out there. And from the responses I've been getting, I feel that I've accomplished that. In any case, though, if there's one last thing I would like to advise anyone who watches this to bear in mind, it's that no matter how much power you have today, time will always be more powerful than you. If you continue to mistreat others, karma will eventually catch up to you. If you resist any input from anyone outside your own border, you will find out in your later years just how inexperienced you really are. And if you continue to blame your problems on everyone but yourself, you will spend the rest of your life alienated from people who don't want to put up with the blame in the end. On the other hand, if you accept what is your responsibility and issue a real apology that is more focused on being honest with those who you've wronged rather than patch up something with saying what you think someone wants to hear, the rewards are much more likely to catch up to you, and history is much more likely to look back on you in a positive light. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you have any other input you would like to share with me, be they examples from your personal experience or arguments that could help me make better cases for mine, I'll gladly welcome it. Otherwise, take care, and I'll see you all next time.